There's a peculiar silence in the space between people, a tension we feel even when nothing is said aloud. A name lingers in your mind longer than it should. A look stays with you. A message half written, never sent. And you wonder, not in desperation but in still curiosity, are they thinking about me too? It's an ancient ache. We are creatures built not only for survival but for connection. And the question of whether another soul is echoing your thoughts has haunted every civilization, every poet, every quiet heart. But where most philosophies either indulge the fantasy or deny the mystery, Stoicism offers something different: observation without obsession, feeling without fixation, a way to detect presence without depending on it. So what happens when someone is thinking of you? Not openly, not with declarations, but quietly, when their mind keeps returning to you, even as they act otherwise. How does a Stoic interpret this? Not through superstition or magical thinking, but through patterns, behavior, and the subtleties of human nature. Because people rarely say what they feel. The Stoics knew this. Seneca spoke of how our emotions betray us even when our mouths do not. Meaning, a person can guard their words, but they cannot always hide their shifts, their delays, their tiny contradictions, their presence when they have no reason to be present. And in those spaces, something leaks through. So if you find yourself wondering whether you live in someone else's thoughts, the first step is not to analyze them. It is to examine yourself. You're ready to notice not with desperation, but with detachment. And here's what the Stoics would tell you. People thinking of you rarely admit it, but they leave traces. Their behavior becomes inconsistent with their words. Their patterns shift without explanation. They mention you in passing as though trying to prove they're not thinking deeply, which only proves they are. They engage in small, unnecessary contact, a message that says nothing, a like at 2:30 a.m., a comment that lands too specifically. All of it seemingly meaningless, but all of it suggesting mental presence where emotional distance was expected. Still, the Stoic does not jump to conclusions. He does not build stories out of patterns. He watches. He listens, and most of all he remembers. Just because someone thinks of you does not mean they are meant for you. This is the boundary the modern mind often forgets. The idea that being thought of means we are owed something: reconnection, clarity, closure. But the Stoic sees thought for what it is, a signal, not a promise. So when you sense someone is thinking of you, don't rush to answer that signal with action. Sit with it, reflect. Let it pass through you like wind through an open window. And if we're not careful, we'll chase ghosts, hoping to touch something that no longer exists. The Stoic lives in the present, but he does not deny the echoes of the past. He simply refuses to be ruled by them. So when someone is thinking of you and you sense it, do not inflate it, do not seek it, and above all, do not confuse it for meaning unless it is followed by action. Love, presence, regret, all of these can live in the mind, but only virtue lives in the will. And unless their thoughts become action and their actions align with virtue, then their thoughts are only shadows, interesting but ultimately empty. Still, these shadows can teach you, not about them but about yourself. Because the more sensitive you become to the signs others leave behind, the more you must ask, am I living in a way that deserves to be remembered? And that is the question a Stoic always returns to. Not do they remember me, but what did I leave behind that was worthy of memory? That is the kind of presence worth cultivating. The kind that endures, not because you stayed in someone's thoughts, but because you left them better. One of the most misunderstood truths of human connection is that people can think of you constantly and still remain silent. Not because they don't care, but because they are unsure, ashamed, afraid, or simply unready. We often imagine that if someone is thinking about us, they'll eventually reach out. That thought always leads to action, but the Stoics knew better. They understood that the mind is full of noise, and that many live their entire lives feeling things they never have the courage to express. So what does it mean, really, when someone is secretly thinking about you? To the Stoic, it means only what it proves. thought without action, intention without expression, emotion without responsibility. These are interesting but ultimately irrelevant. They may carry a poetic weight, but they don't belong in your calculations. Why? Because they are not within your control. And Stoicism, above all, is a practice of freedom. Not the freedom to feel less, but the freedom to no longer depend on the unknown to determine the course of your peace. That said, human nature does leak. It stumbles, stammers, hesitates, and it leaves behind clues, not because it wants to confess, but because it can't help itself. Someone may not say they're thinking of you, but they will act with the friction of suppressed awareness, a subtle hesitation before mentioning your name, a strange defensiveness when asked about you, moments when they bring you up for no reason or pointedly avoid doing so. These are not statements but signals. They don't declare affection or regret outright, but they suggest presence. Their mind returns to you again and again, not with clarity, but with gravity. The Stoic sees this but does not obsess over it. He does not use these signals to build hope. He uses them to understand behavior. And if the behavior is passive, ambiguous, or repetitive without movement, then the Stoic does not chase it. He notes it, that is all. Because here is the danger. When you begin to seek meaning in others' hesitation, you risk turning your life into a response. You risk waiting for someone else's uncertainty to define your direction. But the Stoic is not reactive. He is principled. He leads his life according to what is, not what might be. And so when he senses that someone is thinking of him, he does not respond with longing. He responds with discipline. Discipline in how he thinks. Discipline in how he interprets silence. Discipline in how he separates what he wants from what is real. Seneca wrote that to be everywhere is to be nowhere. And this applies not just to the physical world, but the mental one. When your mind is constantly roaming, searching for signs, interpreting behavior, decoding digital breadcrumbs, you are everywhere but here. Your presence is divided, your energy is scattered, and nothing in your life gets the full weight of your focus. But when you return to yourself, to your breath, your practice, your values, you stop needing signs. You stop looking for proof that someone is thinking about you. And, ironically, it is often in this very moment, when you no longer need them to think of you, that your clarity becomes its own signal. You change the dynamic. You become the one whose presence is felt because you are no longer reaching. You are rooted. This is not manipulation. It is truth. It is the realization that being remembered is not a goal. It is a byproduct of living with such consistency, such quiet power, that your absence begins to speak louder than your presence ever did. And if someone is thinking about you, they will eventually act, if they are guided by courage. But if they do not act, then their thoughts are theirs to hold. You do not need to intrude upon them. You do not need to perform for them. You certainly do not need to suffer on their behalf. You can let them remember you in silence. You can let them feel your absence without needing to make it louder, because your life does not pause for memory. It moves forward through meaning. The Stoic way is not to deny that you wonder if they still think of you. The Stoic way is to ask why it matters and whether that wondering serves your flourishing. If it does not, if it only delays your focus, dilutes your peace, then it is time to let the question go. Not them, not the bond, just the question. Let it dissolve in the fire of your own clarity. Let it be replaced not with certainty, but with strength. Because whether they think of you or not is irrelevant. You are thinking clearly, and that is what matters. There is a strange comfort in believing that someone, somewhere, is thinking about you. It softens the silence. It explains the longing. It makes absence feel like something other than abandonment, like a delay instead of a conclusion. And yet, the Stoic does not find comfort in that idea. Not because he is cold, but because he has no interest in comforting lies. He would rather endure the sharpness of reality than rest on the cushions of speculation. That's the thing about thoughts. They don't bind anyone to action. You can live in someone's mind for years and never hear from them again. You can haunt their dreams, interrupt their focus, stir feelings they refuse to name, and still they may do nothing. Not because you didn't matter, but because mattering isn't always enough. The Stoic accepts this. He doesn't romanticize it. He doesn't demand fairness from fate. He simply recognizes some will think of you and never return. Some will care and never reach. Some will love and still walk away. And still, you must continue. This is the point of all Stoic discipline, to continue. Not despite pain, but with it. Not in denial of emotion, but without being enslaved by it. Because when someone is silently thinking of you but chooses inaction, the question becomes not, what are they feeling, but what am I waiting for? You may feel their presence, in songs, in smells, in the sudden surfacing of a memory, and it feels so real, so timely, so alive. And maybe it is. But the Stoic doesn't allow sensations to override structure. You can feel someone thinking of you and still know that it changes nothing. It adds no new data. It requires no response. You do not owe a reaction to a signal that was never sent. This is where self-command is forged, in the quiet moments where your heart suggests motion and your reason holds the line, where the door could be reopened and yet you do not reach for the handle. Not because you're punishing them, but because you've remembered your standard. And your standard is this: attention must be earned, not assumed. Peace must be protected, not gambled on the return of the uncertain. So what do you do when you're sure they're thinking of you, but you hear nothing? You act as though they are not. Not because you wish to erase them, but because you wish to remain whole. To wait for someone who is thinking of you but not acting is to offer your life to a ghost. And the Stoic does not live among ghosts. He honors memory, but he builds only with reality. That doesn't mean closing your heart. It means opening your eyes. Because Stoic love, if such a thing can be defined, is never blind. It sees the person clearly, flaws and all. It sees the situation clearly, the absence, the silence, the contradictions. And still it chooses to respond with dignity, even in pain. The hardest part, often, is that their silence doesn't always mean they've let go. Some people hold on in secret. Some carry you like a sacred regret. But what they do with that weight is not your burden. They may be afraid. They may be stuck. They may love you in a way that never reaches the surface. But the Stoic doesn't live for submerged affection. He lives for what is spoken, what is lived, what is aligned. There is no room for fantasy in a life ordered by reason. This is the knife edge that Stoicism forces you to walk, to acknowledge the emotional undercurrent. Yes, they might be thinking of me, and still not let it steer your course. You feel it, but you don't follow it. You recognize it, but you don't surrender to it. You let the thought pass through you like a wave, and then you return to shore. Because the Stoic is not interested in being someone's beautiful thought. He is interested in being someone's honest relationship. And if that relationship cannot manifest in truth, in consistency, in mutual presence, then the thought, no matter how real, is not enough. So what remains? You, your breath, your body, your discipline, your integrity, the things that cannot be taken from you by another's silence. If they are thinking of you, let them, but do not pause your life to wait for a thought to become a gesture. If that gesture comes, you will be here, centered, clear, unshaken. And if it does not, you will still be here, still growing, still building, still becoming. That is the essence of Stoic strength, not to avoid love, but to remain whole when love is absent, and to never place your life on hold in the hopes that a quiet echo will finally become a voice. You feel a shift in the air, a change in rhythm, a sudden reappearance in your thoughts, and you convince yourself it must mean something. You assign meaning to timing, to coincidences, to dreams, to the randomness of memory. And before you realize it, your inner world is filled with signs, all pointing to someone who hasn't said a word. But the Stoic does not build upon signs alone. He demands evidence. Not because he is unfeeling, but because he knows that the mind, when left unchecked, would tell you exactly what you want to hear. He knows that longing is a powerful illusionist, capable of turning silence into signal, absence into intimacy, uncertainty into destiny. So what does the Stoic do when the mind whispers, "They're thinking of you"? He listens, but not to the whisper, to the silence that follows. And in that silence, he does not insert stories. He examines the facts. What have they said? What have they done? What have they offered? Not just in thought, but in presence. If the answer is nothing, then the Stoic holds his ground. Because in the absence of action, thought has no weight. No matter how vivid, how convincing, how haunting, it is not something to build a life around. Seneca warned us of this very danger when he said, "What fools these mortals be, who let the winds of fortune steer them when they should be manning the oars." It is a warning against letting speculation drive your direction, against surrendering your emotional climate to the imagined movements of someone else's mind. Let them think of you. Let them scroll through old messages, sit in quiet rooms and wonder, remember your laughter, your care, your stillness. Let them feel your name rise unbidden in their solitude, but let them do it alone, because their thought is not your invitation. Their internal unrest is not your call to action. If they wish to return, they must cross the space with words, with behavior, with integrity. Until then, their thoughts belong to them. And your thoughts must belong to something more stable than guessing games. They must belong to your goals, to your commitments, to the relationships that are mutual, present, and alive. The Stoic does not waste his inner world chasing shadows, no matter how familiar those shadows feel. This is where the true discipline lives, not in denying that they may be thinking of you, but in refusing to need it. Because the moment you need to be remembered is the moment you hand over your peace. You become a prisoner to their imaginary approval, addicted to a connection that only exists inside your mind. But a Stoic does not live in hope. He lives in truth. And the truth is, you can miss someone and still know they are not right for you. You can feel that they remember you and still understand that their absence is necessary. You can love them quietly and still release them fully. These things are not contradictions, they are evidence of growth. When someone thinks of you but does not reach out, they may be stuck in their own struggle. They may be wounded. They may be afraid. But you are not responsible for the movements of a heart you cannot see. You are responsible only for your own. And your heart must remain in alignment, not with fantasy, but with philosophy. That means choosing to build a life where your emotional energy is not wasted on the invisible. It means recognizing that real connection requires courage. Not just thought, but action. Not just memory, but return. Not just affection, but effort. And if someone cannot or will not offer that, even if they think of you daily, then their thoughts are nothing more than echoes in a canyon you've already left behind. The Stoic path is not lonely. It is honest. It makes space for reflection, yes, but not for regression. It allows memory, but not fixation. And most of all, it teaches you to place your worth in what you can govern, your clarity, your conduct, your presence in the now. Let them think of you. Let them dream of you. Let them wonder if they should have stayed. But don't let any of it steer you. You have your own oars to hold. And you're already moving forward. This question quaking, what do you owe someone? What do you owe someone who still thinks of you, but chose not to stay? This question, quiet but persistent, arises in the heart like mist on a cold morning. It's not always sharp, but it lingers, and it carries a strange gravity. You feel it when a name returns to your thoughts without invitation, when their presence walks quietly through your memory, when, for no reason at all, they resurface in your mind just long enough for you to wonder, are they still thinking of me too? But the Stoic does not follow the gravity of nostalgia. He questions it. He watches it like a disciplined observer, knowing that memory has a way of dressing wounds as warmth, knowing that the mind, left unchecked, will find poetry in every pause and meaning in every silence. Yet silence, the Stoics would say, is not meaning. It is simply the absence of speech. and someone's continued presence in your thoughts, or even their own unspoken memory of you, does not entitle them to your future. Epictetus taught that we suffer not from events, but from our judgments about them. And one of the most destructive judgments is the idea that someone's quiet thoughts of us are a form of loyalty, but thinking of someone does not honor them. It does not build a bridge. It does not take courage. It simply happens. The Stoic is not swayed by what simply happens. He is moved only by what is chosen. So if someone is thinking of you, what have they chosen? Have they reached out? Have they acted with honesty? Have they returned with a sense of integrity, not just sentiment? If not, then the Stoic lets the thought float by like a passing cloud. He doesn't grip it. He doesn't demand it mean more than it does. He acknowledges its presence and then returns to his posture. Because the Stoic knows this, being remembered is not the same as being respected. And being thought of is not the same as being held with care. The world is full of people who miss what they never valued properly, who long for what they did not protect, who reflect on what they did not choose, and still choose nothing. You owe such people nothing. Not anger, not attention, not even explanation. But most importantly, you owe them no further delay in your becoming. When someone thinks of you but leaves you untouched by their hands, unchanged by their choices, unclaimed by their action, then their thoughts are not a bridge, but a weight. And a Stoic does not carry what he cannot use to build. This is not cruelty, it is clarity. It is the discipline of detachment, not to escape emotion, but to keep emotion from undoing your structure. Because you've worked hard for this stability, this center, this calm, you've suffered enough under the weight of wondering. You've circled long enough around the gravity of their absence. It's time to move in straight lines again. That means returning to what you do know, your habits, your disciplines, your virtues. The Stoic don't waste time trying to read the unreadable. If they think of you and do nothing, it's as if they didn't think of you at all, because Stoic love is not passive. It does not live in mental constructs or half-kept promises. It manifests, or it dissolves. So let it dissolve. Let the idea that someone is thinking of you be just that, an idea. Let it float where it belongs, outside the walls of your attention. And if that person ever decides to act, they will find you where you always are, not lost in fantasy, not waiting in shadows, but grounded in your becoming. You are not a question waiting to be answered. You are a life being built. And in that building, there is no time to chase echoes. Join us on this journey, and let's build a meaningful life together. And I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write "better every day," so I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today, and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. There's a deceptive comfort in being someone's quiet thought, in imagining that despite the silence, despite the absence, you still occupy a corner of their mind. But the Stoic warns, do not confuse relevance with value. A person can think of you daily and still not treat you with dignity. They can remember your kindness and still never return it. They can feel nostalgia and still walk past you in the street as if you were a stranger. So if someone is thinking of you in secret, what does that truly mean for you? To the average mind, it might mean hope, a thread to follow, a signal to wait for. But to the Stoic, it is an opportunity, not for reconnection, but for reflection. Because if someone thinks of you without action, and you feel that pull in your chest, that pause in your breath, that's not them calling you. That's your own heart asking, what haven't I resolved yet? You see, the Stoic doesn't ask, are they coming back? He asks, why do I still want them to? Because being thought of is not the same as being chosen. You may be a daily ghost in their mind, a flicker of memory between tasks, a source of regret or warmth or confusion, but none of it binds them to you. None of it obliges them to step forward. And unless they do, your obligation is clear. You owe yourself peace more than you owe them your attention. This is one of the hidden freedoms Stoicism offers, the freedom from invisible strings, from living your life entangled in the imagined emotions of someone else, from adjusting your mood based on nothing but intuition and hope. The Stoic says, if they miss you, let them. If they regret, let them. If they are remembering, let them. But don't you dare build your identity around it. Don't become the one who waits for the unseen. Instead, let their silence become a mirror. Not to study them, but to see yourself. What still stirs when you think they're thinking of you? Is it love? Or is it a need to be validated? Is it hope? Or is it a longing to prove that you mattered? This is where philosophy becomes personal. Because Stoicism is not just about strength, it's about alignment. Alignment between your values and your behavior, your needs and your actions. If you say you want peace, but you're constantly scanning the horizon for signs of their thoughts, then you're not aligned. If you say you want clarity, but you entertain fantasies built on silence, then you're not aligned. The Stoic realigns daily. He brings himself back again and again from the temptation to drift, to build castles out of glances, to assign meaning to things that have no foundation, and that takes courage. The kind of courage most people never cultivate, because they'd rather believe a beautiful lie than face an empty truth. But the Stoic is not most people. He would rather confront the truth, even if it burns, because he knows that the burn is temporary, but clarity lasts. He knows that to be free, he must break every invisible contract he signed in desperation, every unspoken agreement where he promised to wait, to hope, to ache in private while the other person moved on without ever turning back. So break them. Break the promise you made in silence to keep watching their page. Break the ritual of revisiting their messages when you feel alone. Break the need to decode their silence like it holds sacred scripture. If they are thinking of you and have not reached, that is their burden, not yours. If they feel guilt or sadness or warmth, that is their process, not your responsibility. Your responsibility is simple, to live as if your worth was never tied to their thoughts in the first place. And it never was. You were always whole. You were always becoming. You were always more than the memory someone might privately hold. You are not a relic. You are not a placeholder. You are not an unfinished story waiting for a final chapter written by someone else. You are the author. And in your story, people who think of you but never show up are side characters at best, not the core. So let them think of you, quietly, from afar. And let that be enough. You're not here to haunt minds. You're here to build a life. But Weiss, pass the space and said, there comes a time when you stop needing to be remembered and start choosing to be present, not in their thoughts, but in your own life. This is where Stoicism leads you not toward emotional numbness, but towards sovereignty, a kind of self-possession so complete that even the knowledge or suspicion that someone is thinking about you no longer disrupts your stillness. Because that's what matters most, the stillness, not the noise of their inner world. Not the secret affection they never expressed, not the guilt they carry, but the steadiness you maintain in the face of all of it. The ability to remain centered while knowing someone out there may still carry your name like a weight. You can let that happen and not need to do anything about it. The untrained heart often confuses thoughts with invitations. But the Stoic heart knows better. A person's thoughts, no matter how frequent or vivid, are theirs. They are not currency. They are not bridges. They are not votes on your value. Unless those thoughts become decisions, they are just shadows, interesting, perhaps even meaningful, but shadows nonetheless. And what happens when you chase shadows? You end up lost in someone else's dusk, far from the clarity of your own dawn. So when someone is thinking about you and you sense it, perhaps from a look, a pause, an online breadcrumb, what do? You let the thought pass. You nod to it as you would an old friend in a crowded street. You acknowledge it, and then you keep walking. Why? Because you've chosen motion. You've chosen reality over fantasy. You've chosen to build with what's in front of you. This doesn't mean you're cold. It means you're focused. It doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you don't act from every feeling. There's power in that restraint, a power the Stoics knew intimately. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your judgment of them. And it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now. Or wipe it out. Wipe out the narrative that says being thought of is a prize. Wipe out the storyline that demands you interpret every subtle gesture as a sign. Wipe out the idea that someone's regret, real or imagined, should interrupt your rebuilding. Because what you are rebuilding is sacred. It is your presence, your routine, your peace. You are not just recovering from love, you are refining your ability to live without needing constant proof of your significance. And here's the paradox: the more you release the need to be remembered, the more unforgettable you become. Not because you're chasing them, but because you're becoming a force of stillness in a world of noise. You are not a message in their inbox. You are the silence that teaches them what they lost when they failed to act. So let them remember you. Let them wrestle with the shape of your absence. But you don't stop. Don't slow down. Don't compromise the values you've worked so hard to anchor. Their thoughts are not your compass. Their absence is not your cue. Their regrets are not your roadmap. You have your own direction, and it's forward. This is what Stoicism gives you: the ability to notice without needing, to feel without falling, to understand without absorbing. You can know they think of you and still remain entirely in your lane. You can grieve the story, honor the bond, acknowledge the memory, and still never look back. Because peace, real peace, is not built on being remembered. It's built on being disciplined, and being disciplined means letting go, not of the past, but of the pull the past once had over you. So if they're thinking of you, good. Let them. But that doesn't mean you stop. That doesn't mean you turn around. That doesn't mean you reopen what you already healed. It means nothing unless it becomes something. And until it does, you stay still. You stay strong. You stay sovereign. Somewhere along your journey, you will realize something essential, something the Stoics understood better than most. Not everyone who remembers you is meant to return. Memory is not a summons. Longing is not a reunion. Thinking about someone, even obsessively, does not obligate destiny to rearrange itself to bring them back. Most people remember others in silence and then carry on. And that is their right. But it's also your responsibility to not let that silent memory control the trajectory of your own life. Let's be honest, it feels good to be remembered. There's a private thrill in the idea that you still live in someone's mind, especially if they left, if they hurt you, or if they never quite saw your worth. The ego feeds on it. They still think of me. But the Stoic does not feed the ego. Not to diminish himself, but to elevate truth. And the truth is this: the fact that someone may be thinking of you, quietly, repeatedly, even fondly, changes nothing about your path forward unless they act with courage, clarity, and virtue. The Stoic doesn't hate those who remember him silently. He simply refuses to live in the memory with them. He has too much to build, too much to protect, too much that is real, here and now. And that's what you must ask yourself when the pull of invisible remembrance tempts you to stop, to look back, to soften your grip on your present. What am I trading for this fantasy? You see, the mind craves symmetry. It wants closure. It wants resolution. And when someone disappears but leaves behind emotional residue, unspoken feelings, unread intentions, unresolved tension, your mind tries to finish the story. It creates its own ending. It imagines them thinking of you, regretting, planning, maybe even returning. Not because it's true, but because the unfinished thread creates discomfort, and humans will do almost anything to resolve discomfort, even if it means believing fiction. But the Stoic trains himself to sit with discomfort. He knows that not every story needs to end on a page he can read. He knows that peace isn't always born from clarity, but from surrender. The kind of surrender that says, even if I never know what they felt, even if I never hear from them again, I will not let that ambiguity own me. This is where strength lives. Not in knowing the truth of their thoughts, but in no longer needing it. You can love someone deeply and still release them entirely. You can suspect that they think of you every day and still keep your door closed. You can feel the weight of their unspoken words and still choose silence, not as punishment, but as protection. The Stoic silence is not passive, it is active restraint. It is the decision to hold the line when everything inside you wants to soften, to return, to reconnect, to believe. But you don't believe what has not been proven. You don't act on what has not been offered. You don't regress toward comfort, you advance toward clarity. And that clarity tells you this: you are not your past. You are not someone else's potential apology. You are not the echo they hear when they lie in bed at night. You are not their imagined future, their secret regret, their quiet affection. You are a sovereign being, disciplined, present, complete, regardless of who does or doesn't think of you. And if they do think of you, let them. If it matters, they'll show up with courage. If they don't, then all their thoughts are just weather, passing clouds against the mountain of your stillness. So sit tall, let the winds come. You are not built to be swayed. You are built to endure and to rise. Let's say it clearly now, and let it settle like stone at the bottom of a deep well. Your peace cannot depend on what someone else is quietly feeling. The Stoics would have considered it a form of slavery, this idea that your well-being must wait upon the unspoken thoughts of another. To them, freedom was not the absence of pain, or the absence of desire, or even the absence of love. Freedom was this: living in accordance with nature and in full control of what is truly yours, your judgments, your actions, your choices. And what is not yours, the mind of another person. Even if that mind is tangled with memories of you, even if their heart aches in silence, even if they speak your name in places you'll never hear. That is not yours to manage or monitor or mold. To try is to chain yourself to a ghost, to wrap your identity around a presence that may never materialize. There is a subtle violence we commit against ourselves when we ruminate on whether someone is thinking of us. We pause our progress. We tighten our attention. We become hyper-aware, almost superstitious, searching for clues, signs, digital footprints. But Stoicism reminds us, obsession, even in its softest form, is still self-abandonment. Because the more you center your life on someone else's thoughts, the less space you have for your own. So what do you do instead? You recenter. You turn away, not out of spite, but out of structure. You look to your breath, your words, your work. You return to your journal, your commitments, your reason. You wake up each day and choose your life again, deliberately, consciously, fully, without asking whether someone else is mentally walking beside you. And still, it may happen. The thought may visit you again: I know they're thinking about me, I can feel it, and maybe you can. Maybe they are. But let that thought land like dust on the windowsill, soft, untouched, uninvited. You do not have to sweep it away in fury, nor cradle it in hope. You can let it be. That is the Stoic way. You don't wrestle every emotion. You don't suppress every impulse. You simply ask, does this serve my path? And if it doesn't, if it tempts you to pause, to regress, to inflate a fantasy, then you let it fall. Because your peace is not negotiable, not anymore. There's a deep lesson here, one often ignored in the popular image of Stoicism, that real strength is not being unmoved by emotion, but moving anyway, through it, with it, past it. When someone may be thinking of you, but they remain silent, the weak soul waits. The wounded soul wonders. But the trained soul, the Stoic soul, watches and walks forward. You've come too far to chase silence. You've built too much to let memory become a leash. And here's what's most powerful. The more you walk in truth, the more your presence becomes unmistakable. Even in your absence, you are undeniable. You leave behind not just a memory, but a standard, a level of calm, of kindness, of clarity that others will struggle to forget. And that is not your concern either. It is simply the result of living with alignment. So let them think of you. Let your name cross their mind like a wave they can't outrun. But you keep building, keep rising, keep becoming so whole that no thought, no silence, no invisible memory can interrupt your peace. Because this life, this one you are shaping moment by moment, thought by thought, is no longer dependent on being remembered. It is built on something far greater, being resolute. There is a sacred line drawn in the invisible architecture of a Stoic life, the line between what is felt and what is followed, between the memory you carry and the steps you take. And this line is not harsh. It is not made of cynicism or scorn. It is made of clarity. It is drawn with the ink of hard-won self-respect, where once there were only blurred edges and wishful thoughts. When someone is thinking of you but does not return, the undisciplined heart asks, "Why won't they come back?" The wounded heart asks, "What did I do wrong?" But the trained heart, the Stoic heart, asks something else entirely. What does their absence make possible in me? This is not a question of bitterness, but of transformation. Because absence, properly understood, is not just an empty space. It is a fire, one that can burn you hollow, or one that can forge you stronger. The Stoic chooses the forge, every time. You see, most people never graduate from the longing. They let someone else's distance write their emotional climate. They wear absence like a badge. But Stoicism teaches a different response. It says, do not let someone's silence become the most active force in your life. Let them think of you. Let their thoughts stir, confuse, ache. Let their chest tighten with memory, but let it happen far from you. Not because you've closed your heart, but because you've chosen to guard it. Not with walls, but with values. You are not who you were when they knew you. You are not the person who needed to be remembered in order to feel real. You are not the soul who waited for closure that never came. You are no longer defined by whether or not they reach out. Because you have reached in, you've met yourself in solitude, and you've seen what a rare and sacred thing that is. So what do you do now? You bless their thought, quietly, privately, as a philosopher might nod to an old student across the forum, with calm recognition and no need for words. You do not curse them for remembering. You do not chase them for forgetting. You do not need to know what lives in their mind, because you are too alive in your own. This is what it means to let go with grace, to hold your center in the face of ambiguity, to walk away not in anger but in wholeness. Let them think of you, yes, but let that thought echo in an empty corridor while you walk in sunlight. Let their memory of you be sharp, not because you waited, but because you didn't. Not because you reached back, but because you rose. And in that rising, you leave behind no invitation, only illumination. You are not a statue in their garden of regret. You are a mountain beyond their reach, not because you're cold, but because you've grown. You've become unmoved by questions that used to unravel you. You've become solid in places you once collapsed. You've become the kind of person who doesn't need to be remembered, because you are fully present, here, now, breathing, building, becoming. This is the Stoic cure for longing. This is the Stoic answer to silence. This is the final truth. When someone thinks of you, it is not your cue. It is your confirmation that you left something worthy behind and took everything essential with you. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. And if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.